put this on full screen?
No, Instagram first. Go ahead. You don't have to put it on full screen.
It's not connecting.
Yeah.
And don't put this on full screen?
No.
Oh, okay. Hello. Good afternoon. I'm not sure where the camera angles are coming from. My name is Dr Kirstey Holland. I'm the principal practitioner and founder of the Holland Clinic in Melbourne, Australia. And I'm here to talk to you today about everything perimenopause and answer your questions and have a chat about the importance of gut health in midlife. Before we begin, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I don't know how to change the slide. Excellent. Alrighty. Medical disclaimer, obviously for a live call, this is not medical advice. Information presented in this webinar is intended for educational purposes only. My promise to you today is give me a woman in her 40s or 50s who's absolutely losing it. She's frustrated, she can't sleep, she can't think straight, she's exhausted, she's irritable, she can't lose weight and has no patience. She doesn't recognize herself anymore. She's at the end of her tether and feels like there's no hope. In just 60 minutes, she will have an evidence-based, clinically proven, science-backed roadmap to restore herself for good and feel the best she ever has. I am having a technical difficulty. I can't quite see the questions coming in, so I just need to ask my technical support team as to where those would be. Could you show me where the questions would come in? Would they be there? Okay, great. Excellent. Awesome. So why women in their 40s and 50s? So in my clinic in Melbourne, Australia, I see women generally, women come in screaming at about 43. That's when you know, the wheels fall off quite often. If not 43, it can happen earlier because progesterone starts to leave the scene at about 35. If it's not 43, it's 47. So, you know, I generally see those sorts of time frames. So if it isn't 35, it's 43. If it isn't 43, it's 47. And what's generally happening in perimenopause is that all of the things that we were struggling with prior to this progesterone deficiency state tend to become exacerbated. I cannot tell you how many women get diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit disorder, any of the spectrum disorders in midlife. Quite often there's been this high functioning state that they're able to maintain, but just as that progesterone starts to leave the scene and we have this progesterone deficiency and this energy crisis, those two things seem to intercept at midlife, creating an unsustainable state for women when it comes to feeling vital and it comes to feeling extremely peaceful, calm, collected, cool, and like you've got this, right? So I have so many women coming into the clinic going, I don't have this anymore. Like, I don't know what's going on, but it's not happening. You know, my circumstances haven't changed, the kids haven't changed, the job hasn't changed, my husband hasn't changed. I just do not have any resiliency. And the reason for this is it generally starts with progesterone. But there are a couple of hormones that we have to look at. We have to look at our stress hormone. We have to look at our nervous system. We have to look at insulin. It is actually quite a complex picture, and every single woman, depending on her individualized biochemistry and predisposition to whatever it may be, is what the symptoms tend to look like. So this is why I support women in midlife, because it is a little crazy and it can go a little haywire. Professor Geraldine Pryor talks about the fact that we are in this estrogen dominant state a lot of the time because estrogen is having a roller coastering of a time. Progesterone modulates estrogen. So estrogen is almost like leaving the kids at home without a babysitter. It is havoc. And an estrogen excess presentation or an estrogen dominance and then an estrogen deficiency presentation, this roller coaster is quite often what sets us off, because one minute we turn into dragon woman where we're screaming at the kids, we can't keep it together, we really have this aggro and this rage, and quite often we also have this additional sort of middle banding and an additional weight underneath the armpit or into the arm that doesn't necessarily make us feel graceful either. So we're having these like physical changes, and then we're having these brain changes. And Dr. Lisa Mosconi is doing the most incredible work in this area with regards to women's health. She's a neuroscientist. She's actually just published a paper about the fact that our estrogen receptors start to increase in the brain as we move towards menopause. But that's menopause. We're talking about perimenopause today, which is really the roller coaster that I was talking about before. And this is where Professor Geraldine Pryor has done so much of her beautiful work. So progesterone starts to leave the scene, and progesterone modulates so many things. And remember this, when you're speaking to a lot of the orthodox medical system, we often hear about estrogen, estrogen, estrogen. But in fact, when we're talking about perimenopause, we really need to talk about progesterone. Professor Geraldine Pryor has published a study which shows that progesterone can, in fact, treat very successfully perimenopausal night sweats. So, and on that topic, perimenopausal night sweats are quite often the least of my patients' worries. They don't necessarily come in for the night sweats. My patients are actually coming in because they're in an energy crisis. They're exhausted. They're putting on weight. They can't sleep. They feel anxious all the time. Their nervous system is just running the show. They feel like there is a tiger at the cave every single morning, and she is coming at them. And she either needs to fight the tiger or run from the tiger. Or worse still, unfortunately, when you've been fighting the tiger or running the tiger for such a long period of time, you get the rollover play dead. And that's quite often where we see the cortisol burnout picture. So, no wonder we're losing it. And with this energy crisis in perimenopause, we have in that low estrogen state. So remember, estrogen is roller coastering because progesterone is not predictable anymore. So when you're in that lower estrogen state, your brain cannot use glucose in the way that it once did before. So you're literally going like, what was that word? That thing that we did, like you can't quite put it together. It's a word like bed, can you put the things on you just have this glitch. And then women are starting to, go, oh my goodness, you can't be serious. Like, I don't know where I've parked the car. Like I literally cannot remember where I've parked the car. Or you open the fridge door and you just stand there staring at the contents, wondering what the hell you were doing, opening the fridge door. Or you put the plate in the fridge and the butter in the cupboard. It's that sort of, that's it playing out in real time. That's it playing out in real time. Or you just mid-sentence, you use the incorrect word, a malapropism, just slip it right in. The incorrect word goes in with full confidence and you're completely unaware of the fact that you've done that. So it is absolutely okay to feel a little overwhelmed. I'm here to tell you that you're not losing your mind, and there is so much that we can do for this. Pantothenic B5 is absolutely incredible, keeping in mind that this is not individualized medical advice. Pantothenic B5 is unbelievable at treating aggro and anger. So if you are losing it with the kids, if you are relationship aggro, if you just really are operating from this kind of deficiency reservoir state, there's just nothing left in the tank. So the kids and your husband and work, like it's all coming at you and you just don't have that resilience. 2 pantothenic B5 3 times a day, my friend, will change your life. It helps you put lead back in your boots. It helps you feel a little more grounded. And really, this is where the gastrointestinal tract comes into play too. With perimenopause, there is absolutely no point in trying to rebalance your hormones prior to repairing your gut. The research has shown that the microbiome goes out in perimenopause. Dr. Stacey Sims, who's an incredible, exercise physiologist, and she trains. She's really in that sort of training space. She really talks about this a lot in her book Raw. I think I've got her book somewhere here. But yes, so it's this adrenal insufficiency state, and we really do need to focus on the gastrointestinal tract and the gut prior to balancing our hormones. Now, why is the gut so important in perimenopause? The gut is so important because we'll get to sleep next. In your gastrointestinal tract is this beautiful forest, right? And it needs to be a gorgeous ecosystem in there. So you need everything to be working beautifully, and that is the microbiome. And within the microbiome, we've got bacteria and viruses and fungi and all sorts of things, and they all work in this beautiful synergistic relationship with one another if you have great gut health and if everything is working as it should. Within inside the microbiome is a place called the estrobolome, and it is in the estrobolome where you detoxify your estrogen. Now remember, progesterone is going MIA, so she is leaving the scene. I'll get back to progesterone in a minute because we absolutely love her. I know estrogen is the diva, progesterone is the goddess. She is the perimenopausal goddess. 300 micrograms of oral micronized progesterone can absolutely change your life, and she can support sleep, mood, immune system, you name it. However, with estrogen, back to the gut, you need to use estrogen and then you need to lose it. If your plumbing channels, your gastrointestinal tract, your liver, your large intestine is not working adequately, you do not detoxify your estrogen as you should. She can then recirculate throughout the system and cause havoc. We don't want estrogen causing more havoc than she needs to, considering the fact that progesterone is leaving as it is. Now, perimenopausal night sweats and insomnia can be treated very, very successfully with 300 milligrams of oral micronized progesterone. This was shown in the study that was published by Professor Geraldine Pryor. Progesterone sleeps. Progesterone is cool. She's calm. She's collected. Progesterone is fat in the right places. Progesterone is fat in your cheeks and fat in your bottom, but progesterone has a waist. Estrogen excess is kind of like this tire or this excess middle banding. Progesterone increases your metabolism, and that ties into the energy crisis in perimenopause too. So progesterone and the energy crisis are really important. Who wouldn't want to be cool, calm, and collected, right? So progesterone is really supportive when you can't sleep in perimenopause, which is between the age of 35 and menopause. Now, menopause is one day. Menopause is the day. It is a graduation. It is when you have not had a menstrual cycle for 12 months and 1 day. Everything post that is called post-menopause. So menopause is in fact actually only 1 day. But what I'm talking about is everything that comes before that 1 day. Post-menopause, post 12 months and 1 day of no longer cycling naturally or bleeding, your hormones should start to calm down if you have transitioned successfully. And that's what we need to do in perimenopause. We need to support our biochemistry. We need to support our psychology, our endocrine, neuroendocrine system. So we need to support our biochemistry. We need to biopsychosocial, as well as the PINE system. So Dr. Sarah Godfrey talks about the PINE system, which is immuno-neuroendocrine system. It is all of those systems that are at play in perimenopause as well. Your psychology needs to be online, your biochemistry needs to be online, your gut health needs to be online, your immune system needs to be online, and your endocrine system needs to be online in order for you to successfully transition into menopause without Alzheimer's, dementia, metabolic syndrome, syndrome X, insulin resistance, or the like, right? So if you can't sleep, quite often it can be a melatonin deficiency. I see melatonin deficiencies all of the time in the Dutch Plus test that I do in the clinic. Plant-based melatonin is absolutely incredible for perimenopausal sleep alongside progesterone. Plant-based melatonin is far better than the melatonin that is synthesized in the lab. Every single plant has melatonin in it. So a plant-based melatonin is the most natural form of melatonin. This helps your body sync its circadian rhythm, which is also really important, so that every single cell in your body knows when it is daytime and it knows when it is nighttime. If your body knows when it is daytime and nighttime, your ovaries do too. And this gives you a much better chance of still ovulating in perimenopause, which is also part of the progesterone deficiency piece, because our ovaries, as Professor Pryor and also Dr. Laura Bryden talk about, the fact that our ovaries are having their last hurrah. This is their sort of final standing ovation in perimenopause, because they are wanting to retire. The energy crisis that I spoke about before is twofold. We have an adrenal crisis on our hands, potentially, and we also have this insulin resistance metabolic syndrome crisis, or this lower estrogen state brain fuel crisis, where we need to be metabolically flexible so that we don't experience that. So it is a roller coaster, and there is a lot to talk about. Glucose can be a roller coaster too. Your blood glucose levels can be absolutely perfect, but 10 years prior to you being diagnosed with metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, or type 2 diabetes, your fasting insulin can have gone out. If you're concerned about this, please test your fasting insulin and test your HbA1c. Testing blood glucose is okay, but blood glucose can actually be fine for an extended period of time, and your insulin, your fasting insulin, can have gone out. So if you're having difficulty losing weight, if you have skin tags, if you have thick yellow skin under your feet, if you feel exhausted after eating, if you crave sugar after eating and you're having difficulty losing weight, you definitely need to test your insulin levels. If your insulin levels are okay, we need to have a look at your thyroid. Because with this energy crisis, from a blood glucose insulin perspective, and this potential adrenal crisis, what is happening when the ovaries are retiring is that they're handing the baton to the adrenals. So the ovary goes, hey, I've been producing gorgeous eggs and lots of progesterone for, 45 years, and I'm done. I'm going on holiday. I'm going to a tropical island. I'm going to go and lie in a hammock. And the ovaries are trying to give the adrenals the baton, right? If you have a high ACE score, an adverse childhood event, higher than 3, and you've been producing a lot of cortisol, or you've been in a stressed out state, you've gone through a divorce, you've lost somebody that you love, you're in an extremely stressful social environment, your adrenals are already taxed and do not want to take the baton from the ovary. They're going, no, I don't want to help you with any hormonal production. I'm burnt out as it is. I've been fighting or running for my life for far too long. I'm in rollover play dead. I can't help you. So that's the clinical presentation that I talk about when the reservoir is empty and you just have such a short fuse. You go at the kids or you go at your husband. You just have that rah, that's that adrenal insufficiency that I'm talking about. So if the ovaries are handing the baton to the adrenals and the adrenals are exhausted because of a high ACE score or extremely stressful circumstances, or if you are overscheduled and wired or overscheduled and exhausted, your adrenals are not really going to be helping with the hormonal production of progesterone, let alone estrogen. So those are a couple of things that are going on, impacting the way you feel in perimenopause and sleep. We also have this nervous system dysregulation, which is so important to talk about. We are naturally in perimenopause, due to the fact that progesterone has gone MIA, we are naturally in a sympathetic dominant state. What that means is that we are not in rest and digest. So we don't feel peaceful just because. So everything feels overwhelming. Everything feels like an alarm or an alert, you know. So many of the perimenopausal women that come into my clinic just say, I just can't cope. I'm so overwhelmed. Like, I just can't do it. The drop off sends me into a tiz. I drop the kids off by the time I get home again. I've lost my SHIT. I just can't do it. I just cannot do it. I just want to give up. I want to go away. I want to run away. This is perimenopause. So we need to do absolutely every single thing we can in our power to get ourselves back into a parasympathetic dominant state. So this is also why our digestion goes out. Our gut is connected to our brain via the vasovagal nerve. Our gut is innervated by lots and lots of nerves. You know that little girl in the classroom that's like holding onto her mum's legs? You know, she's just so nervous and she says she has a sore tummy. You know, it's that kind of presentation in perimenopause too. When we are so stressed out, our gut goes. We cannot digest. And don't forget that, unfortunately, if you're producing too much of the stress hormone, believe it or not, this is so cruel. Here we are, we find ourselves in this sympathetic dominant state, and we're not in this peaceful rest and digest state. And the stress hormone that we're producing too much of, because we're naturally in this state, actually punches holes in the gastrointestinal tract. So instead of you having these beautiful tight gap junctions, you have these holes in your gastrointestinal tract. So in fact, it doesn't actually matter what you eat. If that is the state of the gastrointestinal tract, you have got food particles going from the gut into the bloodstream. Those food particles are then identified as inflammatory cytokines. And those inflammatory cytokines then start to attack your brain and your joints. So when you have an inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract, you have an inflammation in the mood and an inflammation in the mind. To top it all off, cortisol is punching holes in the gastrointestinal tract, and the microbiome goes out as it is in perimenopause. So it is absolutely imperative to focus on your gut so that you can actually use and then lose estrogen, one of the hormonal players in this picture too, as efficiently as possible. The next thing is if you have never done a full elimination and a reintroduction protocol so that you can identify your food triggers, which are also decreasing your immunity, your gut health, and of course, exacerbating the inflammatory cytokines that could be attacking your brain and your joints, I implore you to please do a full elimination and reintroduction diet. It is absolutely life-changing to figure out what your food triggers are. So we have got, you can't sleep. We've got the melatonin deficiency. We've got the glucose roller coaster. We've got the energy crisis. We've got the nervous system dysregulation. Things to support your nervous system. Magnesium is imperative. It is excellent. Magnesium glycinate really helps with sleep. We have magnesium threonate that can cross the blood-brain barrier. Glycine is brilliant. So is melissa. So is passion flower. So is a plant-based melatonin. Remember, this is for informational and educational purposes only, and this isn't individualized medical advice. You do need to speak to your doctor for that. Mineral and nutrient deficiencies like magnesium can create things like restless leg syndrome, keeping you up at night. The blood glucose regulation we've spoken about, taming the stress hormones certainly helps. And if what I've already told you isn't bad enough, When you're producing too much cortisol, the stress hormone, cortisol increases blood glucose, and a roller coastering blood glucose at night will actually keep you awake and wake you. One of the really easy things to do if it is a blood glucose dysregulation is to actually eat sort of 3 to 4 macadamia nuts at night before you go to bed. They're a fat protein bomb and can help regulate that blood glucose. But that isn't going to help you if breakfast, lunch, and dinner are ski whiff. So we have to tame the stress hormone cortisol. Your adrenals are absolutely imperative in perimenopause. We have to focus on the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. The brain is the hypothalamus and pituitary are in the brain. They speak to the adrenals. So we've got this HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. The adrenals speak to the brain speaks to the adrenals. The adrenals speak to the thyroid. So when your adrenals are exhausted due to lifestyle, due to stress, due to the divorce, due to the kids, due to the work, due to the husband, due to all the things, your thyroid can actually go out in perimenopause too. And that's when you start feeling cold. You've got cold hands and feet. You can't thermoregulate. I've got a jacket on inside because we were having our front door fixed today. And it is freezing in Melbourne, Australia. I do have a thyroid condition. I do have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune condition of the thyroid. So I see lots of women in my clinic with the same condition. I manage it extremely well, and I do know how to turn down the volume on the autoimmune condition. I run a full elimination and reintroduction diet in my clinic called the Heal, Seal, Repair program, as well as I also work with the autoimmune paleo protocol. In saying that, it is imperative to get your thyroid right so that you can think, so that your brain is on, so that you're not puffy, so that you don't have any fluid retention, so that you're not cold. When your thyroid is not right, you just feel blah. And it's the kind of exhaustion that isn't abated by sleep. So with a thyroid issue, you wake up in the morning and first thing you feel smashed. So you feel smashed on waking. So we really need to do a full thyroid panel. When I mean full thyroid panel in perimenopause, it is so important. You need to test TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. You need T3, T4, reverse T3. You need thyroid antibodies, antithyroid globulin and antithyroid peroxidase. You have to test your full thyroid. I think in Australia, you're out of pocket for about $160 to test your thyroid yourself if you can't get your primary healthcare practitioner to test it for you. But it is absolutely negligent to not test a full thyroid with all of those symptoms that I've just described to you. Excessive stimulant intake is not going to help us in perimenopause. I absolutely, in the summertime, I love a margarita on the beach with the love of my life. I do. I'm a human being. I love the salt. I love the lemon. It's just divine. In the wintertime, I'm a sucker for a Sangiovese. I absolutely love a red wine. But I'm here to tell you that I cannot drink like I did in my 20s or my 30s. I really pay for it, and my sleep goes out. I have an Oura ring. It's an absolutely incredible wearable. It tells me how I slept. Every single time I have a glass of red wine, my sleep goes down. The other thing that happens when our sleep goes down is that we crave carbohydrates the next day, so we quite often don't make the right food choices. And we also have an increased level of cortisol. And as I've just explained, none of those things are helping us in peri. So welcome to being human. Welcome to wanting to have all the good things. But I'm here to tell you that if we do not take care of ourselves in perimenopause, we are not going to transition successfully into menopause. We don't want Alzheimer's and dementia. We don't want type 2 diabetes. We don't want to be dying of heart attacks. And lifestyle modifications are so powerful. Even the most educated, squeakiest wheels on the planet about menopause and perimenopause, all the big names that have got, hundreds and thousands of followers on Instagram will tell you that lifestyle modifications are the biggest lever here. So really how you eat, think, sleep, move, supplement prior to pharmaceutical medication or hormones is really the most powerful place to start. And in fact, if you get that right and you do need hormonal support, the hormonal support actually works. I've had thousands of women in my clinic come in with beautiful hormonal prescriptions that aren't working because they don't have those other things in order. You have to repair your gut first, then you can rebalance your hormones. But in conjunction with repairing your gut, you need to reclaim your metabolic health. You can't be in an insulin resistant state or have an insulin above 10 or even above 9 and think that your beautiful hormonal prescription is going to work for you. It isn't. You've got to address the insulin resistance and the metabolic syndrome first. So we need to learn how to be metabolically flexible in perimenopause. You can't think straight. So this is this estrogen deficiency state when progesterone is leaving the scene and you've got estrogen roller coastering. The sympathetic nervous system activation, the lizard brain phenomenon. You know, they talk about the fact that when you have cortisol flooding the brain, so when you're in one of those states where you're just, you know, you get home and the teenagers have just got pizza boxes everywhere, you know, there's SHIT everywhere, you've got guests arriving in 5 minutes and you're just losing it. That's when you've got cortisol flooding the frontal lobe of the brain. And yeah, it's not pretty. We can't bring our most intelligent selves to our biggest challenge. So it is so important to downregulate cortisol. We have to do the breathing, we have to do the yoga, we have to do the Pilates, we have to do the meditation. If there was ever a time to take care of yourself, it is now. Fat storage versus fat burning. When we are in this insulin resistant state, we have to, Dr. Laura Brydon talks about this in her brand new book. It's called The Metabolic Reset or Metabolic Repair, depending on which country you're in. She talks about the fact that we have to shield ourselves from alcohol and we have to shield ourselves from carbohydrate. And I love the way she says this. And, you know, the thing is with insulin resistance is that we are stuck in a fat store state. In order to reverse that, there are lots of things we can do. We can get 30 grams of protein, you know, first thing in the morning. We can take in 1 gram of net protein per kilogram of ideal body weight. We can move in a way that we love, that increases muscle mass so that we have a bit of a sponge for the glucose in the bloodstream. We can teach ourselves how to fast in a supported way, in a way that isn't going to cause dizziness or nausea or make us feel sick. We can fast in a way that tells our adrenals that they're safe and that we've had something to eat, but we can actually still access the beautiful benefits of a fasting mimicking diet. I see that working so well in my clinic in Melbourne, Australia. And Dr. Sarah Gottfried showed in some of the research that she cited in her book, I think it was the Hormone Repair Manual, that intermittent fasting is one of the interventions that perimenopausal women are able to keep up. And this, my friend, allows you to lose the weight, get out of a fat store state and into a fat burn state without a calorie deficit and without being hungry and without restricting. And yes, you know, there's this huge argument on Instagram going on, you know, oh, you can't be in a calorie deficit, you know, it doesn't work. You can be in a calorie deficit, it does work for weight loss. Yes, a calorie deficit does work for weight loss. But if you're in a calorie deficit and you're using that method to lose weight, I'm here to tell you that it will work, but you will end up losing that 10 kilograms every couple of years because it's unsustainable. You need to learn how to be in a fat burn and be out of a fat store state without being hungry, because hunger is not your friend. So that's where the fiber piece comes in. Research shows that the majority of women are taking in between 10 and 12 grams of fiber a day, and we need about 25 to 35 grams of fiber. The fiber also helps us to detoxify the estrogen out of the gastrointestinal tract. The fiber makes your microbiome very happy, which makes your estrobolome very happy, which doesn't necessarily allow for that estrogen dominant fat storage or that insulin resistance fat storage, because fiber is not only your friend because it feeds your beneficial bacteria, fiber is your friend because it expands in the gastrointestinal tract so you feel fuller for longer. So there's a lot, isn't there? There's a lot. Nutrient absorption and diet. When you can't think straight due to malabsorption, lots of women go, oh my God, I don't know why my iron is so low. Like, gosh, Dr. Holland, like, help me. I eat lots of red meat. Quite often it's about absorption. And we often see that in the GI 360, which is the functional test that I use to have a look at the gut. And being exhausted, you know, like just start with a bad night's sleep, you know, start with that glass of red wine. Just start there. We have challenges achieving the deep sleep because of the progesterone deficiency. We have challenges in staying asleep, quite often due to the nervous system dysregulation. So things like GABA, things like glycine, things like the magnesium, things like the progesterone, they can really help with the sleep difficulties and those sleep challenges. The energy crisis also impacts the sleep, which leads us to feeling exhausted. When you do have high insulin levels due to high blood glucose long term, you can't access the energy from your fuel. The energy actually cannot get into the cell. So you feel like you've eaten, but you don't feel like you've accessed the energy. So then that's when you crave that sugar after eating. So that's when you really want to teach yourself how to become metabolically flexible. You can measure your waist to hip ratio to see how metabolically flexible you are. I've got a free resource called The Green Room. You can access that via my website. In there, I teach you how to measure your hip to waist ratio. I also have lots of blood tests in there that you could go and ask your primary healthcare provider for. That might be a really good place to start if you're thinking about taking care of yourself in this way. So you want to be metabolically flexible. And, you know, the question is like, how do I know if I'm metabolically flexible? Well, when you take in an exogenous ketone or an exogenous fat source first thing in the morning with a little bit of protein, a little bit of fiber, your body absolutely loves burning fat as fuel. And your brain loves fat as fuel too. Although, of course, we are predominantly glucose burners, I understand that. But once you have used all the exogenous fat store, your body kind of goes looking for more. So if you have any additional fat stores on your body, it might be a really good idea to start to train your body to go looking for them so that your body can burn your own fat stores as fuel. Not only does that give you the waist and the physical kind of external appearance that you're looking for, but it also increases your energy levels out of sight. So increased inflammation and pain in the body. Progesterone is very anti-inflammatory. And then, of course, if we do have a gut intestinal permeability issue, we have lots of increased inflammation and pain in the body. Progesterone can kind of give us this. Progesterone is a diuretic, and she increases your metabolism. But with a progesterone deficiency and a gut integrity issue, you can quite often feel really puffy, like really puffy in the face. Women come in going, I just can't wear my wedding ring, you know, can't get my wedding ring off, can't get my wedding ring on, feel super puffy. So quite often that sort of puffy bloat is just this low-grade inflammation. The fastest way to decrease inflammation systemically is to heal, seal, and repair the gut. Rid yourself of unbeneficial bacteria in the gastrointestinal tract, increase your metabolism, and fire up your metabolic capacity. So your capacity to burn fat and glucose as fuel. So to be metabolically flexible. Beautiful anti-inflammatory things are things like turmeric, quercetin, curcumin. We also have a huge inflammatory issue in perimenopause if we have high histamine levels in the gastrointestinal tract. So if you've always got a runny nose, or you've got a bit of itchy skin, or you feel like you're like allergic to something, you're like, gosh, is it hay fever season? If you're asking yourself those sorts of questions, you probably have high histamine levels in the gastrointestinal tract. And that's something that you can also correct by using diamine oxidase, DAO, or using a low histamine diet. Insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, I've been banging on about that for quite a while. You're exhausted because you're constantly in the stress response state. You know, when you're stressed out all the time and you're just like overscheduled and wired, that is exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting. Overscheduled and wired, we've seen beautiful research for ashwagandha, withania, that works beautifully for kind of the overscheduled and wired. Overscheduled and tired rhodiola has beautiful, beautiful research behind it. Lots of my patients love those two herbal interventions. They're really, really helpful. The immune system impact too. So with progesterone not modulating your immune system can go out and you can just feel like you're getting sick just all the time. Whatever the kids bring home, you've got. Of course, your immune system and your brain are both in your gastrointestinal tract. We now know that the brain, I mean, naturopaths have been talking about this for years, but we now know that there is a gut-brain axis and a gut-skin axis. In traditional Chinese medicine, there is an internal-external relationship between the gut and the skin. Whatever isn't coming out in the large intestine, whatever you're not detoxifying appropriately through the large intestine, due to either an estrobolome backup or histamine in the gastrointestinal tract, will come out in the skin. So if you're having this sort of acne presentation, if you're having these histamine presentations, if you're sort of breaking out in the hives, you really do need to look at your gut health. You're irritable. Like, who wouldn't be, right? Like, who wouldn't be irritable with all of this stuff going on? Like, give us a break. We need like a get out of jail free card for the irritability piece. Yeah, it's nuts. You can't lose weight. We've got the midlife stress and its impact. You know, we've got that high cortisol, high blood glucose, and then we've got that we've got that insulin resistance. So we're stuck in that fat store and we're not in that fat burn state. We've got all of these hormonal changes. In particular, in perimenopause, we can see a lot of that estrogen dominant presentation, right, with that progesterone being low. So that sort of belly fat just, just below the belly button and just underneath the arm. And then we've got a loss of lean muscle mass called sarcopenia. So it is absolutely imperative that we eat 1 gram of net protein per kilogram of body weight, or ideal body weight, if that's a little bit too much for you. Sleep quality in perimenopause, we have to sleep ourselves svelte or skinny. And inflammation. Inflammation will definitely hold on to excess adiposity. You have no patience? Well, you know, who would, right? Who would? I honestly say that if men experienced perimenopause, we would have a public holiday, we would have some sort of payout. My husband's looking at me. Yeah, I really do believe that, we would be much, much further along in terms of the research by now. But of course, we have no patience because, you know, there's a hormonal roller coaster going on. We've got this adrenal fatigue or burnout picture, which basically means flatlining cortisol. It doesn't mean that you've got Addison's or Cushing's disease. It just means that you've been producing cortisol for far too long and you can no longer run for your life or fight for your life. You're more in that rollover play dead state. We can definitely change that by increasing your cortisol awakening response. Cortisol awakening response is so important. We actually really need cortisol. So we want cortisol to be really nice and high in the morning, and then we want her to bunny hop down in the afternoon so we can get to sleep. And we don't want her to be high at night. I so often see an inverse cortisol reading in my clinic. Quite often mums have just been waking with the kids, you know, overnight for so long that their systems are confused and their bodies think that nighttime is daytime and daytime is nighttime. Of course, false lighting and blue screens without blue light blockers, all of that contributes. So the lifestyle modifications, again, super important. We know that the microbiome goes out. We know that our gut changes. You know, how can you have patience when you're bloated and you've just got this sort of like belly that feels blah and you're not sure what to eat anymore. You just, you know, you're like, well, I had the peanut butter toast yesterday and I was fine and I had it today and now I'm bloated and I've got diarrhea or constipation or alternating bowel motions. I'm here to tell you that it might not actually be what you're eating. It also could be. That's why it's so confusing. But that's why I think it is really imperative to do a full elimination and a reintroduction diet to identify those food triggers. And of course, you have no patience if cortisol has been high all night long and melatonin has been low. Your sleep has been disrupted, you know, and we do know, we know that that's a, sleep disruption is a, you know, what is it? It's a torture mechanism. It's very unfair. It's very, very unfair, but we can make it more graceful. You know, honestly, we have to look at what we eat, how we move, how we think, how we sleep, and then, of course, how we supplement. And ideally, we do those things prior to using any pharmaceutical interventions, in my world anyway, in my little part, you know, my little teeny, little tiny part of the internet. That's what I believe. I believe that that's what we need to do first. And I do believe that we need to heal according to the hierarchy of healing. We need to repair your gut, then we need to rebalance the hormones and reclaim your metabolic health for good. And we want to use The easiest interventions first. Food as medicine first, always. So many women come into my clinic and they tell me that they don't recognize themselves anymore and they can't access the joy. And this makes me very sad. But the fantastic thing about what I do is that I get to see the most incredible transformations on a daily and weekly basis. And it is just mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. You're at the end of your tether and no wonder, right? You're feeling completely stretched and all of the other things that you have to do. Quite often it's this horrible mocktail. We've got these aging parents that are, we're grieving too. Our parents are aging and that's not cool. And quite often we're seeing things happening to our mothers that we want to prevent in ourselves. Oh, it can be sad. And then we've got the teenagers or kids in year 12, or we've got little ones, like there's an evolutionary mismatch here. Like we should be grandparents already, for goodness sake. We should be, retiring, and we should be in the village and they should be baking us bread, and, we should just be grandmothers and foraging for berries and things. But, at 50, we still have kids in the house and we're still doing it all, So I do believe, that that's a bit of an evolutionary mismatch. Dr. Laura Braden talks about the grandmother hypothesis. I think so does Professor Geraldine Pryor. Check those guys out. And for other resources, Hot Flash Inc. is a gorgeous journalist. Check her out too. She's really good. So you feel like there's no hope, but I'm actually here to tell you that there is. There definitely is hope. So let's reclaim ourselves. Let's repair our guts. Let's rebalance our hormones and reclaim our metabolic health for good. I hope that some of what I've said here today has been helpful. Please let me know. Also, if you want to have a chat, book a free clarity call with me, www.thehollandclinic.com. I'm absolutely delighted to talk to you and speak to you about your individualized precision medicine pathway to getting you back on track. My health history is pretty crazy. I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. As a young adult, I was told that I was infertile, would never be able to have my own children. I had a thyroid condition, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune condition. I have it under control now. The autoimmunity is completely turned down, mainly through supplementation and dietary intervention. I don't take any pharmaceutical medication. I do take oral micronized progesterone. That's the only hormonal support that I'm on at the moment. And I focus on what I eat, how I sleep, how I move, how I think, and how I supplement. And of course, I use the GI 360 and the Dutch Plus for all of the data, as well as basic blood test results to inform everything that I do for myself and my patients. And I use acupuncture in my clinic too. We really need to address the psycho-immuno-neuroendocrine system, as Dr. Sarah Gottfried says, or talks about in her book, The Autoimmune Cure. The immune system quite often goes out in perimenopause as well, so it can be a little more complicated if you are perimenopausal with an autoimmune condition. But the solution can actually be simple. So if you want to have a look at any of the real-life stories from any of the beautiful women that I've treated in the last 24 years, please head over to my website, www.thehollandclinic.com, and have a look at their gorgeous stories. I was a little girl that got dropped off at boarding school when she was 15 years old, and only reunited with my mum when I was about 21. And I developed an eating disorder. I was definitely self-medicating with food. We know that our gastrointestinal tract, or our earth element, our stomach and our spleen in traditional Chinese medicine is our earth element. So I was really just trying to earth myself and trying to soothe myself through food. So I was obese and I had cystic acne. And I was definitely in an insulin-resistant state and had metabolic syndrome. But none of my doctors told me that this was the case. I went to see doctor after doctor, and nobody ever said, hey, this is insulin resistance. You're in a fat store state. You need to get into a fat burn state. I was just told to eat less and move more, which doesn't work for insulin resistance or metabolic syndrome. It also doesn't work for polycystic ovarian syndrome either, because there's a huge tie between insulin resistance and polycystic ovarian syndrome. So those things need to be addressed holistically, and we need to find the root causes of the symptoms so that we can address them and heal ourselves for good. I was told that the only way that I would ever have a baby on my own was if I took the oral contraceptive pill, which didn't make any sense to me. I was like, oh, so you're going to completely shut off my brain from my ovaries and stop all of the hormonal production in my body. And as far as I know, you have to ovulate to produce an egg, and you need progesterone to fall pregnant and hold that baby. But you're telling me that if I don't take the oral contraceptive pill, I'll never have a baby? So I made it my life's work to figure out how to get into a fat burn and out of a fat store state, reverse my insulin resistance, reverse my polycystic ovarian syndrome, reverse my depression, reverse my chronic fatigue. And I'm here today after 24 years of clinical practice. I've got a beautiful clinic in Brunswick in Melbourne, Australia. And yeah, I'm 48 years of age, and I'm 48 years of old. I'm 48 years of age, and I've never felt better. And I'm in perimenopause, and I've got all of this stuff going on as well. So yeah, it is possible. It is possible. So I want to talk about the science-backed roadmap that I want to give you today. I want to talk about the hierarchy of healing because this is so important. This is where I see women go wrong. Like when they land in my clinic, quite often the prescriptions that they have or the information that they've been given is not wrong. It's just the wrong intervention at the wrong time. So this is just clinical gold. And this is basically because I'm the end of the line practitioner. Like people go everywhere else and then they finally end up with me because I am a little left of field. I am a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine with a double degree in acupuncture and herbal med. I'm a naturopath. I'm a functional medical practitioner, and I'm a practitioner of environmental and nutritional medicine. I'm also a trauma-informed health and wellness coach. And in fact, I was nominated as Health and Wellness Coach of the Decade, and my program, Rescuing You from the Roller Coaster of Perimenopause, which is a 3-part process, was nominated as Health and Wellness Program of the year 2023-2024. Okay, so the hierarchy of healing, we definitely need to repair first. So it's just like, I hate the word detox because your body does the detox itself. We just need to get out of our own way. So we need to take away the toxins. We need to know what to eat and when. That's why I keep banging on about this full elimination and reintroduction diet, because you only need to do it once to figure out what your trigger foods are. And then you've got food freedom for life, right? You know exactly which foods are good for you and which aren't. For me, gluten is no good. I have the molecular mimicry going on in the thyroid. So basically what that means for me with the Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition, is that my body gets confused. So when I eat gluten, my body tries to attack the gluten molecule. The thyroid molecule looks so similar to the gluten molecule that my body will try to attack my thyroid. And that's why I feel so blah when I eat gluten. I also feel bloated. I quite often have some inflammation underneath my eyes. But because I am a human being, I do eat gluten sometimes. And even if I am trying to avoid it, it'll sometimes get into the food if we eat out. Because obviously, like I said, I'm human. I don't eat at home every single day of my life. And I really do love eating out with my family and friends. So it is so important we focus on the gut. We have to repair our gut, our immune system, our sleep, our energy, and our metabolism first. We need to identify those food triggers so that they're stop getting in the way. Because if we've already got this sympathetic nervous system state punching holes in our gastrointestinal tract, you want to eliminate absolutely anything you possibly can that is also going to be deleterious to that state. Then we need to rebalance our hormones, our cycle, and our libido, of course. Once you have a repaired gut, immune system, sleep, energy, metabolism, and hormones, believe me, you have a libido. It's cool. It's really good. And it's naturally there. It's that sort of natural urge. It's not forced. And then we can reclaim our metabolic health for good. So we definitely need to heal in the hierarchy. So if you're going to start taking care of your health, start with your gut. Repair your gut, your immune system, and don't forget, your gut is your brain and your immune system is in your gut. You make 80 to 90% of your feel-good hormone serotonin in your gastrointestinal tract. You want your gut, you want guts of steel. You want to feel like you've got lead in your boots. You want your earth element to be firing on all cylinders. Don't forget that your gut is actually the interface between you and your external environment. It is the place where you take in from the external environment. You metabolize all that you take in through your gastrointestinal tract. The food you take in, You need to metabolize the information from the external environment. You need a good, strong, healthy gut. And then you can rebalance those hormones. Cortisol is a huge player. You have to take care of cortisol. You have to take care of your nervous system. She impacts insulin. So insulin and cortisol first, progesterone and estrogen next, testosterone and metabolism, testosterone and melatonin. Oh, I would actually almost say melatonin needs to be taken care of in repair because we really want to be sleeping. And then we want to reclaim our metabolic health for good. So we want to learn about how we can be these energy efficient burners where we are burning fat as fuel on a regular basis. So repair the gut and the microbiome, rebalance your hormones and reclaim your metabolic health and flexibility. Bio, psycho, social. You have to treat your biochemical health first. Once your biochemistry is working for you and not against you, you will naturally feel better. When you naturally feel better, you can bring your psychology online. And when your psychology is online, you can really and truly impact your social experience in such a beautiful way. The power plan. This is what I use in my clinic to support the perimenopausal women that come to see me. So, number one, I implement the power cuppa. The power cuppa is a beautiful drink that you have in the morning with protein, fat, and fiber. It gets you into that fat burn and out of that fat store state. It tells your adrenals you've had breakfast, you've got protein on board, so everybody is happy. We're addressing sarcopenia, we're addressing the microbiome, we're addressing the estrobolome. It tastes delicious. Your brain comes on board, and then she goes, hey, where did you get that exogenous ketone from? I want to burn more fat as fuel. Teach me how to do that. And suddenly you're burning your own fat stores as fuel. Your energy levels increase out of sight, and you get your waist back. Supported fast. I teach the women in my clinic how to do a supported fast. We don't fast like men. One of my colleagues in America, Dr. Mindy Pelz, wrote a book called Fast Like a Girl. And she's absolutely right. We cannot fast like the guys. Michael Mosley, I believe, bless his soul, he's passed away. Condolences to his friends and family. But he taught fasting, and a lot of the world saw fasting through his lens, but it wasn't nuanced enough for perimenopausal women, in my opinion. So I truly believe that we need to do a supported intermittent fasting regime, or time-restricted eating is quite often more than enough for perimenopausal women too. The food protocol. You need to work out your individualized precision medicine food protocol. There is not one diet that fits all. You don't need to do keto, Mediterranean, etc., etc., etc. You need to work out your individualized food protocol. Yes, I love ideas of, cyclical ketosis. That's somewhat of the concepts that I implement in number 1 and 2. It's a little bit of getting you into that fat burn and out of that fat store state, but it's not necessarily ketosis per se. It is not an autophagy cell death fast. It is a supported fast, and the food protocol is individualized. Some ideas from the Mediterranean diet are always going to be good, right? The 3 cups of green, the 1 cup of color, the 300 grams or 200 grams of high quality protein, whatever that amounts to with regards to your individualized protein needs, which are basically 1 gram of net protein per kilogram of ideal body weight. And then we have the diaries and the journals. Body literacy is so important. Understanding what makes you work and why. So understanding how you feel on your best days. How did I eat this morning? How did I move? How did I think? How did I supplement? How did I sleep? And how does that impact the way that I feel? You can change the way you feel by increasing your body literacy. It's just a matter of paying attention. You have to pay attention to it. Asking yourself the right questions and having the right guidance are imperative. And then, of course, botanical, nutraceutical, and psychobiotic plant-based medicine is unbelievable. And it can change your life. It's changed mine, and I hope it can change yours too. So the hierarchy of healing and the power plan is the basis or the hypothesis of what I implement in my clinic in Melbourne, Australia. And it works. No more losing it, no more frustration, no more insomnia, no more confusion, no more exhaustion, no more irritability, no more weight gain, no more impatience, no more not recognizing yourself, no more being at the end of your tether, and no more feeling like there's no hope. We've absolutely got this. We need to do it in the right order with the right tools. Follow this approach so that you have science on your side. Create a graceful experience of perimenopause for yourself. My name is Dr. Kirstey Holland. Thank you so much for being here with me. Please book a free clarity call with me if you would like to discuss a pathway, a blood test, whatever it is that you want to ask me. Please do that. I don't see any questions in the chat. I've been monologuing for far too long. Thanks so much for being here with me. It's an absolute delight. Have a gorgeous day. See you soon.